So that's the Freedom Gettysburg joke, and it's the Argentina CULL, okay? And all of the political manipulation of those countries involves the planting of prime ministers and presidents who are totally fascist. And I think I've told you in the past about the Council of Spain, I believe it is, and there, when you get voted out of the fascist countries as the president or the leader, then you become an unelected officer on a fascist grouping that is a globalized grouping of presidents and prime ministers. And the irony is that that is fascist Spain that we talk about all of the time, where they do all of the training for the IRA and they do all of the laundering for the Nazis in wartime into fascist Chile, fascist Argentina, and the countries are run by the Nazis as soon as the war's over, when the Nazis get to transition through the Canary Islands thanks to the popes. Okay, the churches and other religions are getting desperately sad as I continue this truth campaign. I got hugged by the innocent vicar this morning, and all of them are now beginning to make massive cover-ups for every story I tell. Only the people high up the food chain are revealing that. Yeah, I don't know whether or not anybody who are the foot soldiers and who pay for all of the massive religious frauds get to know what I'm doing on YouTube, but the priest and the man that told me to behave myself a few weeks ago before he disappeared with a couple of weeks in bed because he's crippled by something, yeah, he is now telling all of the stories about the resurrection and how it is actually proven to have happened, yeah, and it is absolutely twisted. Every word that I utter in these videos comes out in the Jehovah's Witnesses Hall or the Church of Scotland, and the pretense that they're having songs of praise on the telly is just a pretense. They do not have the courage to do anything like that because their whole life is dedicated to the lie. Yeah, thank you for those that are seeing the light and beginning to see the weight of the things that I do not just accuse religions of. I verify that everything that they do is a joke against the people and the worshippers. Okay, so what they did in Argentina and Chile was absolutely vicious, and that is the cover-ups that you see on all the YouTube videos about people writing about Andrea something or other, which is the culling of the people in North Africa. Okay, so I've made a few mistakes and I need to confess that because it's Holy Week still. Okay, so the film that I kept ranting on about, where the man Timothy Spall got his cancer, is not called the real name for that film is Life is Sweet, and there is the profile for that film. Okay, it features Alison Steadman, Jim Broadbent, Claire Skinner. So this is the one with the chef and the little Lithuanian woman, the little Armenian woman who works as the waitress, and the man who gets the cancer gets horribly drunk, is totally twisted in his life, and all of the people, the cockneys that we were warned about in the Hunchback of Notre Dame film. Do you get the cock neighing joke? That's the cock crowing joke to deny Jesus ever lived, and the neighing of the donkey that was Jesus. And the whole of London is completely twisted, and that's why they've got the flood control mechanism down near Greenwich, where the Admiralty used to steal from the world, and now Baroness Blackstone does it big time because she's in the Anglo-French Chamber of Commerce and she scammed us out of the Channel Tunnel contract as we were just entering into the whinging about Europe issues. Okay, so the film is Life is Sweet, and that's sweet because that's the one with the chocolates on the tits and the bulimia and all of the political incorrectness, and Alison Steadman is part of the Shipman jokes, and the Shipman is the surname for Gavin and Stacey, and Shipman was the war correspondent for Iraq, which is why they need all of these multiple tiers of cover-ups. The name of my wife's school chum who licked the chocolate off the girl's tits with the Cockney accents that are almost unbearably broad, yeah, is Alan Rickman. He's now become a film director. Yeah, and all of them went to the same school as Lord Boateng, Dr Stephen Andrew Hancocks, registered in Ipswich and registered in Little Stein, with Germanic implications, in the Prime Minister's constituency of Whitney. Okay, so I was a little bit inaccurate on those issues, but let's get back to what I was talking about when my batteries run out at the end of video number 2, which is very explicit, and I believe has taken the breath out of the innocent vicar, because she knows now the magnitude of all of the jokes right across Europe, into Russia and even into China, and the Jewish links to the gods and goddesses. It is ruthless for profit, and the people in the clerical garments that are prepared to limp into the pulpit have no shame at all. Okay? And I don't believe those are gender issues. But when I revealed the story about the priests in the Catholic Church who are forced to be celibate now, the ones that give the propaganda out and give the sweeties to the young children every time they need to keep their popularity, the whole of the worshipping base, if they are aware of it, it is a scandal that they dedicate their lives to telling lies about God. When I told you about that story about Deuteronomy, where God is the first rule on the 10 Testaments, yeah, the biblical rules, the first one and the most important one of all in the Church of Scotland's dogma is that you must believe in God and you must not plant false icons like Jesus Christ, because that is not God's laws. They are unable to explain that now, and they are in a total tiz. Yeah? Right then, back to the story about why I played you Don't Cry For Me Argentina. So look up Kievan Rus. And that's where we ended up with the baptism of Vladimir. Now if you look at the thumbnail I've used for video number 2 on these horrible topics, about the only 3 of the saints that I've looked at on the 14 that were listed, yeah, it takes us into Princess and Saint Olga, and that launches Olga Corbett, yeah. The Corbett jokes, yeah, and that is the Ronnie Corbett jokes in Chipping Norton. Do you remember her? Are you old enough? There's the baptism of Vladimir, a fresco by Viktor Vaznetsov. Okay, let's keep going down, and there's the hagiography in Sofia at the interlinks between Czechoslovakia, where we had the Pope during the Great Schism and during the plague. They're ever so nervous when I mention the plague word, and they're ever so badly coughing in some of the denominations this morning, yeah, even the children, and it is just an absolutely scintillating day, because I made that decision to ignore the relatively trivial divorce case and to get on with the story about how the gods have been defrauded of everything that they made great for our countries and all across the universe. It is magnificent, and the humans are ever so sly about covering up God's greatness. So there's somebody getting a bath, and that is the capacity to make someone a rival to God, because you're able to get in the pulpit and then tell them a crock of lies. And the crocodile man and the joke about knocking on wood, yeah, his name was Jimmy Nail. And so let's get back to the Don't Cry For Me Argentina link, and let's take you up to where I introduced the people that are the So we've got the pantheons, and you've got the launch of Perun here, and I believe that the pair of the people, these are the Norse gods by now, and so we're talking about the Aryan myths again, and we're talking about people that are in the Norway region. And you must realise the magnitude of the joke about kings and queens becoming gods. So the Queen in Britain is God's representative in England, and you've got Jarl Hakon, who's the king of Norway, involved in the story about the deities. His religious reform failed, okay, in the late 980s. That's almost into the period where we went in the Crusades to brutalise the Holy Land. And the wormwood thing that I told you about also is a joke about a jail in London, right next door to a massive hospital in, I forget which region it's in, it may be on this computer. Yeah, Wormwood Scrubs is in the Hammersmith area. Do you remember the story about the Jewish the hammers that look like the dreidels, Longshanks dreidels, and the hammers become the icons for Russia? Yeah, and the communist menace, and all of the things that we are spoon-fed by people that write in the Chronicle, the primary Chronicle, okay? The circumcision issues, the taboos, alcoholic beverages, pork, Jewish envoys, Khazars, yeah? And what are we seeing there about the loss of Jerusalem was evidence of their having been abandoned by God. Yeah, God, one of the commandments is that you must love your neighbour. Nobody pays any attention to that at all through all of human history. And the links of St. Barbara yeah, and the Hanna-Barbera people to the mafias in America, and to the massive frauds that are the links to the munitions and artillery industry, the RAF, and even the Maroons. Yeah, when you think about that, when you think about the American troops and the people like Field McConnell who tell you that they are Maroons, yeah, and you think about the implications of the Virgin Mary, all of the time the same jokes get replayed, okay? So they've got loads of taboos, but the whole of it is just a joke. So drinking is the joy of the Rus. We can't go without it, okay? Right then, I wanted you to find the name of the good God and the bad God, because what they've done is to turn them, both of them, into bad gods, and then make Christianity look as if it's also inverted all of the stories about the weather patterns and the rainfalls. All of that becomes the same as it was when Jesus was on top of the mountain for 40 days. Yeah, and he was under a cloud, and being under a cloud in the desert is a really good thing to happen. But when you apply that story to the rest of the whole world, yeah, then you've got a massive twisting of the story and all of the motives for telling it. And that occurs just as the Kievs get stripped of their country. Okay, so here's the names. This is where we got to in the last one. So there's the launch of Olga Korbut into the gymnastics sector in the Olympics. Okay, and the Kievan population was Christian by 944, and the Christian part of the Rus swear according to their faith, while the ruling prince and other non-Christians invoke Perun and Velez. It's amazing how many evil names have got the V at the beginning. And the Valdevilia earthquake and all of the links to all of that, it's really, really spooky. And the Valhalla myths about my own home, which is called Valhalla, and the persecuted and the losers in wartime are convicted into Valhalla, or they are sent there, which is just a joke about hell. So there you have Eva Peron, who's singing that song, And in the same movie that she made with the man who was the gravedigger in the Mozart film, that is the composer of the vaudeville songs in London, and the man who made the Odessa File soundtrack. Yeah, all of them are deeply steeped in making a laugh out of the killing and the diasporas in world wars. Okay, so we've got the good and the bad, but both of them are quite sinister really, because the Perons move around the whole world making themselves power bases for the fascist cause, and Velez does the same thing, but one of them is portrayed as being good so that Madonna can keep a reputation. And after all, Madonna is a joke about the parentage of Jesus Christ, the fake up. Okay, so let's keep going down this and see what we get below those images. And you've got massive investments in the churches. Yeah, you've got people being christened in public places. Yeah, and you've got the Red Cross on the uniform. And we mentioned the link to munitions, explosives, artillery, and the emergency services like the ambulances. Okay, there's a rotunda, like the little buildings near David Murray's golf course at Melrose, at St Boswell's, where the council have the donkeys in the field as part of the same joke. Okay, and the links to Byzantine Emperor Basil II take you right into the central bank in Switzerland. Right, let's get a little bit quicker because I'm going out for a walk. It's a beautiful afternoon. So Vladimir the Great on the Millennium of Russia monument in Veliki Novgorod. Yeah, do you get it? All the jokes about when September end, 9/11, all the stuff about the festivals for the Jews, but what you've got is Novgorod. Yeah, and that is there is no God, which is the joke about the tax exile who is Gérard Depardieu. Yeah, God has departed for good. Isn't that funny? And Novgorod is right at the heart of Russia, and I remember watching many documentaries on that place. It's beautiful. It's a joke about the God in the skies and his being taken over by the one true God who's a human fake. Yeah, and all of it in the churches, everything that they do is they're prepared, they understand the risks of being blasphemous and to undermining gods, the gods in the sky that create the universe, but they're totally prepared to keep doing it, even although their colleagues are in the ITU and some of them are in the grave already, and the elders are picked because they're linked to the banking dynasty and the entrepreneurial citizens, and it is really, really sad that none of them see the risks except the blonde who's everything but dumb. Yeah, and she did not give the sermon this morning, so I don't know whether or not she's getting more and more orientated towards the lords in the skies that give us our rewards and our weather pattern punishments and our massive floods. Okay, we get the rewards all of the time, which is why I believe that I'm committed to completing this story before I can get back to the divorce trivia and the infidelity and the disloyalty that is happening in my domestic situation, which is totally irrelevant to the future of the world. Okay, so prior to the wedding, Vladimir was baptized either in Cherson Essos or in Kiev, the Kievan joke, taking the Christian name of Basil out of compliment to his imperial brother-in-law. Okay, Basel is the central bank and the epicenter for the globalized economic fraud. And you've got the beautiful frescoes and the lovely rivers. Look at them. Conservative blue. Yeah, and it's ever so beautiful. If the creative people were just allowed to be creative about the real stories and the rules that we were given about loving our neighbour and obeying the one true God in the skies, not the messianic derivatives of that, then we could have a beautiful life. We would get rainfall when it was needed, and we would get the conditions for growth when it was needed. The Barclays joke about the barley and the fields of gold. Yeah, some of the stories are so accurate that it takes their breath away in several fraudulent sectors at the same time. Okay, so there's the launch of baptism in Kiev, the Kievan joke, and I forgot to put a picture of Kevin, the son of the devil, in the Devil's Advocate movie, in the thumbnail for the last video. Okay, and I have not made any highlights on this one unless they're further across. No. So we'll have a quick flick through this. You can look it up on Wikipedia, and there's the launch of the... Oh no, the texts are beautiful. I've been to the Durham museums and I've seen some of the documents. Some of the documents that were written by St Cuthbert in that era. But St Cuthbert's last breath was that he wanted to be buried on the Farne Islands. And he was for a few hundred years. But when they realised the tourist potential of putting him in Durham, in the massive cathedral there that is magnificent, yeah, they then disinterred him and they put his bones into the massive cathedral, and suddenly it's a tourist option, like the bones that they found in Leicester. And there's a massive argument between York and Leicester about whether or not that King of Britain gets buried in one of those two towns in a tourist museum. And they're supposed to be moralists, and all of their life is dedicated to the theft project. Okay? But now that they're seeing the risks, it's really fulfilling to find out exactly how this ticks along. And when you expose it, the rewards from the people that you admire so much, that actually make the rules, are really, really fulfilling. It's a pity that I didn't have the time to colour in this one and to put some highlights around the outstanding things. In 2008, the National Bank of Ukraine issued into circulation commemorative coins, Christianization of Kievan Rus within rebirth of the Christian spirituality in Ukraine series. Yeah, the central bank in Ukraine is run by a Russian boss, and Russia gets demonized all the time, and all their bosses get taken into other countries once they've been trained to steal through their own central bank. And the particularly obvious example that impacts on us in Scotland is the Lithuanian central bank, where the Romanov Tsar went with the Rothschild as a middle name, and that's where Hearts Football Club were stripped of all of their assets unless you are a shareholder. Yeah, everything is regulated out of the twisted European banks that have the Rothschild's personnel on them, and they're trained in the central banks elsewhere, like Mark Carney, the Canadian. Okay, so because I have not highlighted this, I'm going to skip through it. You can read it for yourself, and it's globalised. There's Magdeburg, the Thietmar of Meersburg, Encyclopedia of Islam. All of it is a massive, massive set of historical documents that do not mean a thing other than they are prepared to launch a false icon entirely for profit. And that is the same for all of the messianic figureheads. Okay, and there's the Pauline epistles and all of the jokes, and you can see they've got the sinister black crosses and the same icons that the Nazis wear. And round about the Ukraine, round about the south of the Black Sea region, you've got the places that were actually salted and are absolutely desolate, and they were associated with the launch of the Mercedes cars and the uniforms that we now see that the Knights of Malta wear. And all of it is a massive joke by the elites against the poor. and the war dead. Right then, I really regret not highlighting that one, because it was quite shocking when I read it in bed the other morning at 3 o'clock, and my sleep patterns are all over the place as a result. And that's why I try to make all of the videos on the same day without the memory lapses. Okay, so Jimmy Neal, you understand now, and he's involved in the Argentina movie as a bit part actor, and in the Auf Wiedersehen film, when they get him back into campaigns in other countries apart from Germany in the following episodes that they made of that program, they went to work in America at one point, very close to Las Vegas, yeah, and they also went to work in, I can't remember if it was Spain, it was one of the tourist resorty places, and they used the swimming pools and all of that. It's the same thing, but when Oz, Jimmy Neal, was recruited to go back and join the team, he was found in Argentina, which had been brutalised, and the landmines were still alleged to be taking out the people that vote to stay in British ownership. And it's tragic if you're a soldier in Mrs Thatcher's campaign to win the election, which is the whole reason for the brutalisation of the Falklands. And they are a massive tax haven, and the scams in the oil sector have been profiled by Gordon Bowden, who now has the ear of the BBC. But not much is changing. Okay, the Christianization of Kievan, Russia, Wikipedia, have a look at it. Yeah, it's massive, and the maps take up vast tracts of land, and this is still happening between 800 and 1100 AD. And when it's happened, the myths that are associated with the evil people then are declared, and the evil people then demonize the pagans using those myths. It is really, really sad. Everything that they talk about is a lie. Their whole lives are lies, and they dedicate all of that to indoctrinating all of their followers, except the blonde. Okay, the people in the Catholic Church have no guilt, and I don't know why the priest does not do the heretical sermons. He leaves it to the, I forget what they call the man who's able to marry and has been married happily for 50 years. But he's not trained as a priest, but he's the one that takes all the risks, and he looks really like the Godfather. Yeah, that's Marlon Brando, the cover for Brandeis in World War I and the 2 bloody years that ensued. Okay, all of it is shameful and sinful. But they don't give a shit as long as they get their little bit of trickle down. And the stuff from New York and the mentioning of every story I tell in the sermons, it is illicit, and they talk about privacy, and they are listening to my every video, yeah, and they are listening to me making this video now, which is why the 12-hour response time gets my news onto the front page of the Scottish papers in time to cover everything up. Okay, right, Peru. So, do you get it? The Peron joke is the Pyrenees joke and the Peru joke, and that is a continuation of the mountains from the molehill Marshall jokes, the Mars Hill, the links to the Piso family in the Roman court, and the elite writers that we covered yesterday in my wife's parting joke. And there's my brother-in-law's parting joke. He gives me that when I spend my last time with my family in the elite mansion worth £650,000, yeah, and what they want to do is to take my beautiful home from me, to silence me as a political researcher. They now know that that will not happen until they're prepared to kill me. Okay, so he sent me a box of sweeties from the House of Commons as a joke. And they would not come with me to visit Blenheim to see how Churchill has shared that joke by brutalising the world since the Orange Wars. Right next door to where he lives, and right next door to Royal Wootton Bassett, where the war dead arrive in the body bags, and right next door to the no bombing regions that the great writers are ever so prepared to occupy whenever there's a risk of them getting hit by the shrapnel. Right then, so Peru. I think this one will be highlighted. And all of this is under the culling of the Kievan pagans. Okay? So, let's scan to the top. We've got lots of highlights in this one. And there, it is just amazing how bold and brilliant their lies are. And their terror campaigns are just the same. This one's got the ice skates in it, and it's got the totem poles that I remember building as a schoolboy in my woodwork lessons, or maybe it was art, like the art of stealing from your citizens. So this is called Perón Thunder, or Perun Thunder. So do you see the Peru link? And the link to the fascists that are Eva Perón and her husband. Yeah? Celebrated by the man who writes the vaudevilles and the music films about the diasporas that is the Odessa file. Yeah, they're ever so clever. That little shit, the director in the movies and the vaudevilles, he's had his heart attack already, but you cannot find news of any of that. Okay? Perun, Thunder and Fire Pagans. Okay? So there's a picture of the baddie, that's Velez with the V at the beginning, being defeated by Perón with the spears. That's the Britney Spears joke. I know the joke about all of the record companies being part of the world history, and His Majesty's voice with the little obedient dog sitting right next loyally to the propagandist trumpet on the gramophone. Okay? So Velez is defeated by Perón. Srebrenica, Croatia, probably the 8th century, and it's a dragon slaying tool. Yeah? The joke about crocodile shoes and Jimmy Nail is that the crocodile is the dragon in the local river, and it keeps everybody in fear, like the lake at Moorbattle, where the local church is, and that's where the blonde sometimes preaches. Yeah? And when they drained the lake, they lost their parishioners, because there was nothing to fear anymore. Yeah? So then they launch the Islamic menace. Can you see how it works? And there's the reference to meeting the Danish pagan yesterday, all of the Brits and the Norse, to William the Conqueror, when the French kicked in. That's British history in inverted commas. The Norse run it, which is why their myths and the names of our days still interlock with the stories that were told at that time. Okay, so let's see if we can get down. Slavic mythology, Perón, Cyrillic, and that's the Cyril joke about the posh name for people in London. And I think there was a Cyril in the England football team that won the World Cup. Cyril, I can't remember what his name is, but Cyril Smith in the region where Lord Markham now lives, in Rochdale, is a paedophilia victim beyond the grave. That's how they do the cover up. Okay, so Perun is the highest god of the pantheon and the god of thunder and lightning. Okay, attributes were fire, mountains, the oak, the iris, the eagle, the firmament. Okay, in Indo-European languages this was joined with the notion of the sky of stone, horses and carts. That's the Piso joke. Everywhere you go you cannot escape it. The hammer joke that we talked about yesterday, and we talk about as the iconic symbols for Russia. Yeah, the axe of Perun and arrow and war. He was first associated with weapons made of stone. That is the caveman joke. Okay, the Duke of Roxburgh joke, the film about the Duke of Roxburgh hosting the man who was Tarzan, primitive, from the jungle, beats his chest, defends himself with we'll see it further down, okay, rides in a chariot pulled by a goat buck and carries a mighty axe, or sometimes the Russian hammer. The axe is hurled at evil people and spirits will always return to his hand. I loved documentaries when I was a child on the telly, and there were beautiful ones made about geography, and we got geography and we got a thing called modern studies at Kelso School, and they were brilliant because it talked about world affairs and history. And there's a totem pole, and it looks a bit like the Ent in the Lord of the Rings film, and you can see that it's got icons on it that I don't understand, but the one on the bottom I do understand, because it's the Christian cross and the sword all at the same time. And that is a 8-pronged star on there, and you can see the indigenous Americans totem here, yeah, and that is replayed further down, and it's also replayed on Easter Island, if you remember back to those days when we watched the documentaries on the BBC and there was a modicum of truth in them. It's a massive joke. Wooden statue of Perón in Kiev, Ukraine, erected in 2009, destroyed in 2012 by unknowns, because it might give the game away. Okay, there we've got the dried old structures again, the hexagram that is the Rothschild's icon, the polo joke about the female vagina, and the hexagram all tied into one. Okay, these are dried old hedge funds ensure your safety jokes, and it's also becomes Mary Poppins' umbrella. Do you see it? The umbrella is a massive joke, yeah, because that is what you need when you get the weather patterns when humans behave badly. Okay, and Mary Poppins is the launch of the jokes about the global banking frauds. Do you remember it? With the Americans dancing on the roofs, the chimney sweep, which is part of the sanity clause, and the Santa fake saint stories. Okay, the next one, we've talked about Olga Korbut, and we've talked about the launch of all of the Eastern European religions and their conversion into Christianity and being bullied into submission with the threat of crucifixion as the ultimate sacrifice, exposed to the victim, the pagan nations, as a ruthless threat. Okay, so these are Gromoviti Snachi, or thunder marks. Such as these are ancient symbols of Perun, which are often engraved upon roof beams of village houses. That takes us back to the Topol stories, and when I mentioned it yesterday, it was in the sermon in the Catholic Church this morning. Yeah, the fiddler stories about what was the name of the film? Fiddler on the Roof. Yeah, let me read it again. Ancient symbols of Perun, which are often engraved upon roof beams of village houses, particularly in Eastern Slavic populations, to protect them from lightning bolts. The reason that the churches in the Borders region near Flodden have got stone roofs are obvious to me now. Yeah, the gods are really angry about what the Christians have done to their place, and all of the pagans are dead as jokes. It's conjectured their circular shape symbolises ball lightning. Yeah, extreme weather patterns that we're now paying for carbon consumption reasons in the biggest joke of all, and that is the El Nino joke. And Nino is the most common name in the Armenian region, where all of the oil wealth is now Britain's and the G8's. Then you get drawings of Slav axe amulets based on archaeological findings dating between 11th and 12th century. So I'm a lumberjack, I'm doing okay, and suddenly the ice skate and the pucka jokes in the ice rink and the ice hockey stories are launched. Yeah, and these are individual saws that people can carry with them. And the I'm a lumberjack story about Canada and its involvement in all of the frauds and all of the tax exiles and all of the land grabs are massive, and I will not forgive them for that, even although my relatives come from there. I think 12 of my grandpa's brothers went to Canada when they were young, and they came back to Britain when they were in midlife to sponge off us on massive holidays. Yeah, but it's best not to look back in anger. I'm trying to reassure the Rothschilds with that. I do not want wars to happen again. Everybody needs to be constructive, even although the jokes at the world's expense are immense. Can you see the links to the skating sector? I had skates. They were left in the attic of my dad's house, but when we returned from New Zealand they had been disposed of, like almost all of my old books. Yeah, and all of my stamp collection and everything that I had up there, and everything that we had that were relics, like gramophones and the HMV story that I've just told you, have been binned. Yeah, and everything that is chattels now gets sold to people at great expense, instead of them giving what they could give to their own children, because of disloyal lawsuits to break up households, because of the world's most effective fraud researcher and his revelations. Okay, so there's the Elias joke that is the umbrella. Okay, and the dreidels and the spinning tops and the peeries are the same structures. Okay, and the meteor storms references are very reassuring that I'm on the right track, and I will not drop my attempts to expose it until those attempts are all out there. The Acts of God 7, the skates and the puck and the puka link to the genocide in World War II. That is the Winnie the Pooh joke. Yeah, Operation Winnie the Pooh. The links to the bunny rabbits and the Easter bunnies that have been explained to you in great detail, and that's all after the pagans are driven underground for fear of their lives and crucifixion. Okay, do you get it? So the Peruvian link is a direct derivation of the Eva Peron movies and the Peron fascism. She toured the world like Mrs Simpson, talking up World War II. And that's why she sings about not being prepared to roll over and die and to stay in the back room like Marlene Dietrich did. And when she came out of the back room, she just made a film about America in the cowboy hat, the Mars Hill joke, yeah, and she was suddenly accepted as a warmonger on the other side of the war. Okay, right then. De Bello Gothica, a historical source written by the Eastern Roman historian Procopius. Pope Pius XII is the Nazi Pope with the canaries on his shoulder. Okay, in 980, when Prince Vladimir the Great came to the throne of Kiev, he erected statues of 5 pagan gods in front of his palace. Perun was a chief among these, represented with a silver head and a golden moustache. You remember the stories about the gold rewards and the silver rewards that we talked about when we talked about St. Barbara, the explosives expert and the leader of all of the NATO warmongering professions. Vladimir's uncle Dobrinja also had a shrine of Peron established in his city of no God. Yeah, isn't it funny? That's right at the heart of Russia. After the Christianization of Kievan Rus, this place became a monastery which quite remarkably continued to bear, highlighted in red, that's the Rothschild's name. Yeah, the bears, many of them work in Fox News now, and all of the people that I used to correspond with, often several times in the same morning, yeah, before I could not afford to pay Rupert Murdoch's Sky licence, the bears is the name of the Rothschilds before they became the Rothschilds, and they became Jewish. Yeah, because they were pagans, because they're from the same fucking place. Oh, I swore again. Okay, and we've got Chronica Slavorium, slave registers written in the latter half of the 12th century. If you read the Old Testament, you don't have to do it carefully. The slaves are an intimate part of how every country is run. And we're not allowed to smack our babies now, but they're quite proud of that when they discuss it, and they make little notes on their computers in the Jehovah's Witnesses hall, and they're prepared to lie about the stories, and all of these are written thousands of years ago, if you believe that. It's actually written in the last fortnight in New York, and with their help and the monitoring of what I say in my own house, they are able to change the story and cover everything up. Yeah. I don't know how they live with themselves, but the man that is the dead ringer for my old boss in pharma, Trevor Jones, he's now beginning to wilt a little bit. He came outside with me today. I did not have enough time to talk to him. It's really good that Christians and other people who worship God and their messianic derivatives, that they have conscience. That is what will change the world. Perun, the famous mountain in Bosnia-Herzegovina, Vares, Perunuk, Perunuvac, Perunica, yeah, and you can see that the Pika joke and the Puka joke comes into every one of those words, and the peso begins to emerge as you get further and further down the list. Okay, the Pern spinning wheel, Pierre Peter joke and Dridle. Okay, the Pyrenees mountains from a molehill, Marshall joke, the Peruvian Alps, and the Puka all through it. Yeah, yeah, and the Peron, the Peronica, Glava, Perunjavez, Perutovac, and the Irish-German green connection. Okay, Perun's plant, and sometimes also Bogisha, God's plant, and all of the stories in the Lord of the Rings about the bogs and the marshes with the dead looking up from the puddles or the little lakes under their feet. All of it is part of the same story. These names today mostly represent mountain tops, but in medieval times large oaks, sacred groves, and even entire villages of citadels were named Perun. Okay? Do you see how clever they are in replaying the jokes and the myths? And the ancient links to the Aryan stories written by the brothers Grimm are really, really important, and that's why the tower with the 3 windows is just the Heidi story. Yeah? Okay, let's keep going down, because there are a lot of highlights below this. Irish Germanica. Can you see the links? That's the Greens, and that is the Axis powers. The Allied powers are red, white and blue, and the church in Scotland that is St Andrews, I forget which denomination it is, I think it's evangelical, and it's also a derivative of the other Church of Scotland. So we've got 2 Church of Scotland outlets. The one that is built of the cedar wood is absolutely magnificent, and the people that worship there are ever so well off and well to do, and they've got plaques all around to Scots in 1942 dying in car accidents near Duns, where Melrose and Porteous are, with the massive links to the money laundering globally, yeah, and to Michael Moore and to George Soros and JP Morgan. Yeah, that's the Scots of the Walter Scott dynasty. On the other wall, all of the plaques are to the Balfours that partitioned Palestine. And the cedar wood in the roof is absolutely magnificent. And the vicar's name is Tom it's a direct joke, but I cannot remember what it is at the moment. I'll raise it in another video. No, I can't remember what it is. It's part of the wood crucifixion joke, but I can't remember what it is. Right then, so you've got the puckers, the Irish, German, green jokes, and everything that is about brutalising the world and profiteering from it by a tiny number of elites right at the top of the food chain. Unless I'm reading the Church of Scotland wrongly, I do not believe that any of the locals get any of the take. And it's horrible to think that that is maybe why the blonde embraced me this morning. Okay, she's lovely. She knows what is happening. She understands it deeply because she thinks about her role in life, making her maker, and she looks at what happens around her. Okay. And the Irish woman, the GP, was there this morning. She will not look me in the eye. I was going to wink and blow her a kiss. Yeah, they all were at the rugby yesterday as well, and all of the people that I worked with in Boots who scammed me out of those jobs are just got their heads deeply into the trivia. Yeah, I talk to them, I try and engage them, but they will not have a bar of it. Okay? And the Jedburgh team won. They talked to me. I did not talk about justice or law enforcement. Yeah, they're all really decent people, and if they could show the spirit on the pavement that they show on the rugby pitch, we would be free already. Okay? In Slavic mythology, much like in Norse and Baltic mythology, the world was represented by a sacred tree, usually an oak. That's the navy again, okay? And all of the pictures on the walls of the Church of Scotland have got all of the different trees that the Pythons sing about, the mighty larch and all of that stuff in the same movies about the lumberjack doing okay and the sexual diversions into the panties that the girlfriends wear, and John Cleese's first wife is part of that joke. Okay? And it is really, really sick. Deep down in the roots of the tree was the place of his enemy, symbolised by a serpent or a dragon or crocodile shoes. Jimmy Nail, watery god of the underworld. Veles, this is the opposition now, the woman with the V or the man with the V. Okay? Because everything is twisted. They need a male gender hero and a heroine and a villain, and they need a female gender one of the same, just in case somebody gets onto what they do and how they keep replaying the legends. The animist icon for objective good people is the two-headed eagle, and the emergence of that story. The two-headed eagle is the symbol for Russia's freedom. Yeah, looking in very nervously over both shoulders for a knife in the back from the G8 leaders. Yeah, because the people they plant there are millionaires. Perun pursued Veles around the earth, attacking him with his lightning bolts from the sky. Veles fled from him by transforming himself into various animals or hiding behind trees, houses or people. Wherever a lightning bolt struck, it was believed that this was because Veles hid from Perun under or behind that particular place. In the end, Perun managed to kill Veles or to chase him back down into his watery underworld. That's the bogs. The supreme god thus re-established order in the world, which had been disrupted by his chaotic enemy. So that's the bogs that are the Somerset levels this summer. Yeah? And all of it is just amazing. The people in all of the Hollywood movies, like the one about King Henry trying to lop the heads of all 6 of his wives, they show you the windstorms, they show you the weather patterns. When they're peacefully negotiating, the sun comes pouring out. Yeah? He then returned to the top of the world tree and proudly informed his opponent down in the roots, Hi Tam Tabo Mekto Tam. This line came from a Belarusian folk tale of great antiquity. To the Slavs, the mythological symbolism of a supreme heavenly god who battles with his underworldly enemy through storms and thunder was extremely significant. So that is the underworld, Middle Earth jokes. Yeah, and that is shared with the man in Cumbria who was the governor for Iraq, and his name is Rory Stewart, like the Jedburgh cover for him. Yeah, the local councillor who's a joiner, like the dad of Jesus. And from Perun and Velez, this idea of cosmic battle was passed on to God and the devil following Christianization. The devil was written into the stories by one of the last of the Piso bloodline, and it was his dad that he chose to pick on. Yeah, and what you've got, while the exact pantheon differed between the various Slavic tribes, Perun is generally believed to have been considered as the supreme god by the majority, or perhaps by nearly all Slavs. Okay? In the classification scene of Georges Dumézil, Perun was the god of the second function. This is the stoning jokes, okay, by all Slavs, tribesmen and the last pagans. In the classification scheme of Georges Dumézil, Perun was the god of the second function, physical and military power, linked to St. Barbara and Santa Barbara near Monterey, a god of war, and as such he was armed with several fantastic weapons. Perun's lightning bolts were believed to be stones and stone arrows. According to folk beliefs, Fulgurites, Belmanites, and sometimes even the remains of prehistoric stone tools found in the ground are remains of these weapons. Various Slavic countries also call these deposits Perun's stones. My house is littered with stones. Some of them I've chucked out my window recently, and that's the Chipping Norton joke that my wife and brother and the Prime Minister enjoy so much. The chips and the Mr. Chips, and send the English kids into war and to their deaths in the uniforms. Yeah. Okay, so more on the stoning jokes. Watch the Life of Brian movie on the stoning, and it will tell you the story about Deuteronomy. It does not explain it like I have just done, but they are all blaspheming. They are all following a false god and a messianic figurehead that never existed until the Pisos got really creative. Okay, Perun's lightning bolts were believed to be stones and stone arrows. According to folk beliefs, Fulgurites, Belemnites, and sometimes even the remains of prehistoric stone tools found in the ground are remains of these weapons. Various Slavic countries also call these deposits Perun's stones, thunderbolt stones, thunderbolt wedges, and Perun's arrow. Other unrelated names for these include devil's finger, God's finger, and mother of God finger. Yeah? Isn't it really funny that you can have the mother of God being a virgin on earth? Yeah? There is no sign of any female gender up in the heavens. We have to resort to the men, yeah, down here to create the mother of God and the son of God, and all of it is a massive abuse of the gods in the skies that created everything that we have abused. The winds turn stones into God's meteor. Okay, Perun also had another type of weapon in his arsenal, as destructive as his firestone arrows, but even more unusual, mythical golden apples. While this may not... Okay, so thunderbolt stones were sometimes said to be transferred back to the sky by the wind after being under earth for a period of 7 years. The weapons of Perun protected against bad luck, evil magic, disease, and, naturally enough, lightning itself. That's the stone roof on the church. Perun also had another type of weapon in his arsenal, as destructive as his firestone arrows, but even more, that's firestone tires, by the way, even more unusual, mythical golden apples. While this may not seem to be much of a weapon, in many Slavic folk accounts, the golden apple appears as a talisman of ultimate destruction. An example from a Serbian folk song from Montenegro with strong mythical elements relates. He grabbed 3 golden apples and threw them high into the sky. 3 lightning bolts burst from the sky. The first struck at 2 young grooms, the second struck a horse in a stall, the third struck 600 wedding guests, and that's the Piso numbering code again about Jesus. And all of the stories we've heard from Aberall, Reuchlin, not an eyewitness left, not even to say how they died. Okay? Poetic license to steal. Pagans taken down by the apple as God, stones the new religions on the yellow brick road. Okay? It's just amazing. The weather patterns in America are immense. They get 6-inch snowballs and sleet and hailstorms, and it's just, all of it is about human behaviours and the massive cabal that are the Freemasons. Okay? And there's a link to 999 in the story, and 8 apses, and the Novgorod story again, and you've got 9 pukas. Similarly to the Perkunas, that's the pukas, yeah, all of it built into the etymology of Baltic mythology. Perun was considered to have multiple aspects in one Lithuanian song. That's where the heart's money is. Yeah, the Romanov, Rothschild has it. Indian European thunder gods, Perun's vegetative hypostasis was the oak. So, can you see how the trees in the Lord of the Rings film are actually the tools for the elements to help bring down the villains? Yeah, in the circle of friends that are the profiteers, led by Gandalf, my brother-in-law's mate. Yeah, that's Sir Ian McKellen, and there's his signature on this little declaration that we are fascists and we are going to steal the whole of the democratic world for you, signed on behalf of Dr Andrew Stephen Hancocks OBE by Ian McKellen, the massive criminal on all the boardrooms that I can make you aware of if you send me a polite request for a PDF for free. Look him up on company check, Ian McKellen, the wizard's hat. Everything about that film is a joke at the people's expense. Okay? Shrines of Perun were located either on top of mountains or hills, or in sacred groves underneath ancient oaks, and that's where my wife and her brother took me to. It's called the Rollrights. They have stones standing underneath the oak trees, and there are chickens all around, reminding us about the cock crowing and all of the cock and bull stories that were mentioned by the Catholics in the sermons this morning. These were generally a place of worship and holding of sacrifices with a bull, an ox, a ram and eggs. Okay, the Rollright stones right next to Chipping Norton and the government sector with links to the Murdochs, to the Freuds and the world's owners. In addition to the tree association, Perun had a day association, Thor's Day, as well as the material association, Tintin and Rio Tinto. Okay? Post-Christian Perun. The Roman Catholic Church offered St. Michael, the Jewish angel, the archangel who was a commander of heavenly armies and vanquisher of the devil, believe that if you like, was also a fitting replacement for Perun. So you can see how now the heroes are becoming the villains, and that is coincident with the launch and the popularity of Christianity as it takes over from the pagans for fear of crucifixion. It's also possible that on a local level Perun was replaced with St. Vitus. St. Vitus is, I believe, to be a victim of St. Vitus's illnesses is to become slightly epileptic and to be subject to palsies. Okay, everybody, the Vitus story and the Vita is built into the Godfather film, and it is part of the lyrics of the Coldplay song Viva la Vida. Okay, and where the scent did not differ on some levels of folklore and popular Christianity, some of Perun's characteristics were passed on to the Christian God himself. Oh, that's God! Look at that! They have risen to new levels of loyalty. This is the Deuteronomy command. On some levels of folklore and popular Christianity, some of Perun's characteristics were passed on to the Christian God himself. Oh no, they're indoctrinating the God in the skies, which is fairly typical of the human teams. Yeah? So there we've got a picture of Miss M. Presniavkov, Perun, okay, 1998. And what you've got is a golf tee, which is actually the part of the oak tree with the acorn taken out, okay? And the 12-acre wood jokes that you get in Melrose, and the fact that the shield is the wrong way round. So he's protecting himself from an attack from the rear by his friends in the lodge, and having the knife put right between his shoulders, okay? And he's got the shin guards, the shin joke is part of the shining joke, and he's got the kilt, and he's got the beard, and he's got the little tash, like the Islamic stories about everything above the lip having to be covered, okay? That's Hitler with the tash joke. And you've got the club that we're talking about here becomes the empty fruit of the oak. The T, can you see it? The T, that's also at the head. When the bands take the soldiers to their death to the beat of the drum and the sound of the pipes, they've got an icon, a stick like that they chuck up in the air. Forget what they call it, but it carries the flags at every British Legion across the globe, or at the Australasian equivalents, where they are in total denial about the killing of their relatives. That's the Anzac slaughter by the Mr. Bean joke, okay? So the T and the circumcised male member, yeah, can you see it? The top's cut off, it's been circumcised, it's the golf tee, and it is also the baton for the pipe band in the Las Vegas military tattoo. I did not see Alasdair Moffat this morning. He may be quaking in the corner, but I very much doubt it. He's a hardened profiteer. Okay, shin pads, tash and beard, mithril armour, like Brittany's boyfriend in the car with the milk. The shield is directed towards the left hand. Yeah, okay, it's the left side from the back that gets attacked by the status quo and the quislings that run our world in these secret societies and NATO's armies and the related saints. Okay, the shield, he has a halo too. Can you see it? The Halo Trust and the Halo Company is a joke about the company that is supposed to be taking the landmine risk away, that even the man with the crocodile shoes, Jimmy Nail, was exposed to in the Falklands. Okay, let's keep going. Perun, oh now we've got a different derivatization of it now. In addition to the name similarity, Perun's choice of weapons include the axe, the hammer and the bow. Like the god, Perun can speak with wolves. Oh, here we go with the moon, the full moon joke, the vampire jokes and the launch of Rome. Yeah, Romulus and Remus dropping out into the colostrum flow from the teats underneath the wolf. That is on the 7 hills in Rome. And you've got the Elias Maquera jokes again, and the links to the beautiful beaches in the Hebrides are also part of the Maquera joke. A portage of the unknown. I've told you about the portages in Canada, in the regions near Alaska, where portages, they had massive earthquakes in the 1960s, massive landslides. Okay, French technique on this is about New World Order bands called Gorod. That's a reference to Novgorod, there being no god. Okay, in Marvel Comics, that's Klaus Maswich's stories, and the stories about Superman. And you know the story about Superman who wanted to professionalise war, fell off his horse, broke his neck, and then gave the lecture on professionalising war in the story about the remains of the day. And he died really, really young. the People's Protectorate is also named Perun in Marvel Comics. So they twist the jokes around and the heroes become the villains and all of the humans become profiteers. Also in Marvel Comics, in the alternate continuity of Ultimates 2, the terrorist group The Liberators has a member named Perun. Okay, so now that when you look for these things on the search engines, all you get are about new software that the kids play with. Yeah, Graves, Robert, here are the New World Order writers. So Robert Graves, do you get that? The grave robbers. New Larousse Encyclopedia of Mythology, Crescent, 1987. That's the turkey at Christmas, the crescent moon joke, and the Rob Graves joke. Okay, right then, I think that's the end of that tab. And I think the next one is particularly sad. So that page was wikipedia.org, Perun, just P-E-R-U-N. So that's the Peron joke, and that is the Latin America fascism joke. Right then, hopefully this one is highlighted as well, and I find this particularly sad because as a kid I was fascinated by Easter Island. Yeah, it's just the totem pole joke about the killing of the Indians and the killing of all of the indigenous peoples all over the South Pacific. Okay, near Easter Island, Totem, the Veles jokes. So this is Veles now, and the stories about the really bad god that was fighting against Perun. S is for serpent. Okay, this is the god of autumn. Yeah, my wife was born in October. All of the songs about When September Ends by Green Day. Yeah, Western lands, underworld, earth, waters, fertility, cattle, pasture, snakes, wolves, medicine, music and magic. Do you wanna play with magic? Everything that Coldplay touches is a sad indictment of the world being run as chaos and for fraud reasons. Okay, symbols are the bears. I've told you already about the links of that to the Rothschilds, and the bears in the woods. Yeah, there are the Yosemite vast tracts of land, Yogi Bear in Canada jokes, the wolf, the snake and the bull. Okay, Apollo pagan substitute bear, Baal, serpent links. Okay, Slavic equivalent, the Triglav, and the Roman equivalent is the Apollo link, and the Apollo link is the polo mint joke and the vagina. And no wonder the gods get ballistic, because that's the Romans even before the Greek legends were launched. Okay, so the modern statue of Veles on Veles Mountain in the Czech Republic. This is not Easter Island, it's the Czech Republic, and there's a pile of stones at the bottom like the Rollrights and the Chipping Norton region. Okay, and you've got it's all over the place, associated with dragons. Yeah, the menace, the crocodile in the local lake, or the wormwood joke. Dragons, cattle, magic, musicians, wealth and trickery, opponent of the supreme thunder god Perun. So he is, these are both male genders. Okay, and the battle between them constitutes the most important myths of Slavic mythology. Okay, and that he may have been imagined as serpentine with horns of a bull, ram or some other domestic herbivore and a long beard, which is why I've put it in green for the simple people, and the greens swallow all of the stuff about global warming and will be happy to pay even more taxes for the right to breathe, because they're really stupid, and that's the Morris dancing community that prance around to the beat of the drum and then get sent into their deaths to the sound of the all around my hat green willow joke. Yeah,
in the jokes that the pythons share with all their money in the tax havens about the magnificent larch, the magnificent oak, the yew trees, and all of the yew trees that were used to make bows and arrows. And then you've got the links to cricket. I don't want to talk about that. It makes me feel sick. Right then. Okay. So, punish oath breakers with diseases, the opposite of Perun, who is described as a ruling god of war who punishes by death in battle. So you can see that none of these gods obey the god's rules about loving your neighbour and not being genocidal with them. Okay, as we have been for all of human history. In the later half of the 10th century, Veles or Volos was one of the 7 gods whose statues Vladimir I, Prince of Kiev, had erected in his city. That's the Vladimirs that are in the Rothschild interlock, and that is Kiev, that is Kevin, that used to be Kievan, and is the son of the devil in the Devil's Advocate movie. Yeah, see the thumbnail to the previous video. Perun's shrines to be built high on the top of the Mars Hill when it becomes a mountain. Okay, the city of Veles in Macedonia, we mentioned the links to the Marks and the Tartans yesterday, over which looms the hill of St. Elias the Thunderer. Also in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Have you heard of them in the past in the light of NATO's actions and the depleted uranium that was used? A part of Sarajevo, where World War I was sparked by the Humes on the Hume Bridge. That's Humes, the philosophers that were mentioned in the philosopher's story in the Roman Catholic Church today on Easter Sunday to cover up the sins of the low Roman Church in world history. Okay, another example is the town in Croatia situated on the seashore under the peak of Mount Uka. That's the Puka joke again, nicknamed Perun. So they're now beginning to nickname the heroes and the villains in all of the stories, so that all of the humans can get away with all of the frauds and the cash. Okay, among Western Slavs, which could be translated into slaves really easily, the name can be principally found in the 15th and 6th century Czech records. It means either dragon or devil, or crocodile, yeah, or serpent, or anything that they can scare the shit out of you, like Vladimir the Impaler. Okay, it's probably the same as Vala. Okay, so dragon or devil or Vala. This is Valhalla. Welcome aboard. I may not have it for very much longer. My final proof hearing is on the 8th of this month, which I think is either Tuesday or Wednesday. And Monday is a holiday for religious reasons and the joke about rolling the Easter eggs away from the tomb and the brutalisation of Vietnam with Agent Orange, shared by the Rolling Stones with the free world in inverted commas. It's probably the same as Vala, the enemy of Vedek, thunder god Indra, okay, Baltic thunder god Perkunas, yeah. Yet the Pukas are in every part of the story. That is Hitler's friends in World War II, as well as Nordic Priapus. Okay, the Priapus story is about using drugs like Viagra to give yourself a permanent erection. I'm a professor of pharmacology, and that is about erectile dysfunction and the drugs that reverse that. Isn't that funny? If you're Pele, it's really useful. Pele used to have everybody's respect, but like everybody else, he has sold his soul to the capitalist world. Okay, another parallel to Norse mythology is that of the vulva. The vulva is the cheeks of the female vagina. Okay, isn't it funny? The Volvo is the Norwegian car and all of it. So vulva was a Ceres that was connected with water and foretelling the give me water joke that Shania Twain sings, which is about the orgasm, yeah, for the female gender, and it's the wet patch for Lily Allen. and the na-na jokes I've explained to you that take you back to the south of the Black Sea, where the Rothschilds emerged from, and it was owned by Julius Caesar, who has the same initials